Texas and elsewhere. So welcome, Mark, and I'm super excited to have you on board today.
Thank you very much, Rini. It's great to be here with you, and looking forward to a great conversation.
Thank you. And today, actually, the main topic of this webinar is Lean Agile Leadership, actually, because see, if you look at any sort of lean enterprise, the change management right now, what we are facing is a digital disruption, and digital transformation is the only solution to counter that digital disruption. And digital transformation requires the business agility in the enterprise. And in order to inculcate the culture of business agility within the organization, we need to have leaders who actually support the concept of lean and embracing the lean and agile transformation within the organization. So with that context, Mark, I would like to ask, how do you define the concept of lean? Because majority of the people, they misunderstand, they have a notion that a lean and agile are same, and they interchangeably use these terms. But I'm sure you have your definition and your perspective. We would like you to share with our audience.
Yeah, and thank you, Srini, for that question, and thank you everyone for joining in, those of us who are able to hear us clearly. So lean, typically when we talk about just pivoting from the basic and fundamental concept of lean, when we hear lean, something that is streamlined, something that is very built to sustain.
Right.
The idea of lean is really to minimize waste, right?
Yes.
But within a system. But there also is a component to lean that is very important for us to keep in mind, that it gives us the way to think about it from a system approach, right? We look at an entire system or an entire ecosystem, and then we start thinking of ways to streamline, whether it is streamline processes, improve behaviors, improve practices, improve conduct, or build a certain value system or proposition around how we do things within that ecosystem. And the end result of it is to really drive improvements, continuous and steady improvements in the way the process flows, or the system, or the different components within the system jive together to really move things forward. So if you asked me, lean is it's a method or a way to streamline and improve, whether you're looking at it from a system standpoint or from a people standpoint that are part of the system, to streamline and improve this, to streamline and minimize the waste within the system for the purpose of improving the people, the
Right.
processes, and aligning with better outcomes. And that's
Absolutely.
how we actually look at the concept of lean.
Right. I mean, I still remember, I think I was doing when I was doing my MBA, it was like it all originated from Toyota, right? Basically, Toyota manufacturing system, this entire lean concept came into existence. And yes, it is waste, minimize the waste and decrease the queue lengths and improve the flow. I mean, these are the three things that comes to my mind completely. Absolutely, Mark. I completely agree with you on that. But what is the main purpose of actually bringing lean into this business agility concept? Can you please throw some light on that?
Yeah, and that becomes a very critical part, right? And one of the key reasons I think about it is why lean is important is that it gives you the system thinking, right? It gives you the opportunity to look at the broader context, of the system itself. And when you start looking at the system, you're not just looking at certain aspects of that system, but you're looking at the various components within the broader system and how they interact to give the outcomes, right? Or the output coming out of that system. So I think it's very important, because if you look at it within the context of every organization, Organizations are made up of teams. Organizations are made up of different units, business units, i.e.
Right.
you're looking at compliance, you're looking at regulatory, you're looking
Right.
at governance, you're looking at IT, you're looking at HR, you're looking at security. So
Right.
all these various components need to find ways to work together to actually deliver the right value to the end customer. It's no longer an instance where things are looked at from the components system, because you're
Right.
needing to look at the entire organization and how it moves into being more flexible. So
Right.
if you're thinking of delivering the agile, being flexible and having that level of stability as well, but not only that, carrying along your organization with you to a point where we understand the impact of implications of certain variables that operate within that system that we is coexisting, right? Once we have that understanding of it, I think it now starts, the concept of lean starts positioning us to be better agile organizations. Will adapt
Correct.
more and align more to the changing dynamics of the marketplace.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I completely agree with you on that, Mark, because this requires, in my opinion, a little bit of an unlearning for the leaders, frankly speaking, because people coming from command control, traditional management style, this is going to be a little tough for them to change their mindset, because
absolutely.
You are actually letting people decide what they want to work on, and you are empowering them, and you are not actually micromanaging them. And that's actually new style of management, if you ask me. And that's going to really require like a current traditional management folks to unlearn and relearn, frankly speaking. Yep, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure. And what is agile leadership anyway? I mean, like, I see lot of things actually on the internet discussing about the agile leadership, right? So what does it exactly mean by, traditional leadership versus, or the regular leadership versus agile leadership? Can you actually throw some light on that, Mark?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we talk about agile leadership, I think we're looking at, so the concept of agile has to do a lot. I think it's going to be very pertinent for us to explain really in depth what agile really means
Right.
as a practice, or as a way of its own of doing things. Because agile is mindset. So when we start looking at it from the standpoint of mindset, is it mindset? Mindset around what exactly? Is it mindset around people? Mindset around how we treat people? Mindset around the culture that we enforce within the boundaries of the organization? Or is it mindset that we imbibe in the processes that we have working for us within the context of our organization as well? So when we talk about agile leadership, it's really leaders who are able to have that 360 view of
Right.
what is the impact of people having the right culture and aligning it with the right process. What does it do to my organization? How am I able to encourage and motivate my people to really give results while
Correct.
feeling very confident and comfortable where they are when it comes
Right.
to their role in the organization? How do we really build a culture of learning? How do we
Right.
build a culture of inclusion? How do we present and position ourselves? Like earlier on, you had made mention of command and control. A command and control culture, and as we're going to talk more as we discuss the lean, there's a restroom model
Right.
for leadership that we're really going to explore a couple of things, whether you're looking at it from the pathological, bureaucratic, or even a more generative type of leadership style. But within the context of what we're talking about, agile leadership is leaders who maintain that mindset of being flexible with the required stability, but not only that, able to evolve that around people, culture, and process. And that's what agile leadership is.
Yeah, exactly. I think it all boils down to, positional authority versus earned authority, frankly. Positional authority comes from the title, and earned authority comes from the trust and,
Absolutely.
the trust and faith in your leadership based on the behaviors that are exhibited by the leader himself, frankly speaking.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I couldn't agree more than that on that point. Like, most of the organizations, what I see here is like they're still stuck to that pathological and bureaucratic cultures. And if you really want to be innovative, generative culture is the way going forward, no doubt about it. Because within the generative culture only the innovation can sustain and grow. Absolutely. And that requires agile leadership. Definitely. Definitely.
And that's where it comes into the picture.
Correct. Yep. And then thank you so much. I mean, that's a very eye-opener, and I hope our audience are enjoying. And by the way, just to let you guys know, there is a Q&A button, and if you have any questions there, you can click on that Q&A button there, and then you post your questions there. We are actually going to dedicate around 10 to 15 minutes of the time at the end of this session to answer those questions. Okay, that's for the audience. Okay, make sure you make use of that one. Okay, let's get back to the third question. So bringing together the concept of lean and agile leadership, how would you describe lean agile leadership and its applications in an organization? Like typically we see a lot of agile transformation projects. They start with a hybrid approach, right? Halfway through they run the organization with waterfall, and then down below with the development teams, they run the scrums and they call themselves agile. In reality, it is in a hybrid organization, but still lean agile leadership. How do they actually apply these lean agile principles within the organization so that they become highly agile enough to respond to the changing market demands, Mark?
Yes, a great question. So first and foremost, I think we need to understand the first aspect, and this is for me over the years and what I've seen or experienced happen. I think transformation or the engagement, or when an organization decides that, okay, we're at a pivotal point in our transformation process, or in where we are as an organization, and we really need to make a shift. I think it starts by the organization goes out there to do an adoption, right? They adopt the agile way of doing, the lean agile way of doing things. And then they say, okay, teams, here's exactly what we're going to be doing moving forward, right?
We call it as burning platform, right?
Yeah. They go ahead and say, okay, this is what we've adopted. We need yours to adapt to it, right?
Correct.
And then the teams will start restructuring, realigning, going through the process of, okay, now we're embarking on a process of transformation. But one key thing too that is always left out of the transformation is the accept component. And the accept component boils down now to the individuals that make up that organization, which is why I always think when you talk about a transformation is really change plus transition.
Yes.
We can make the change within the context of us being a larger body by adopting and adapting, but the transition from where we are to where we need to be becomes more of an individual element too, that people need to make an honest effort, right? To really merge themselves in the change and the transformation. So what we see happening most of the times is that leaders talk the talk,
right?
But most of the time don't walk the walk. And there are two sides to it, because if you're leading by example, you also need to lead the change itself, right?
Right.
So in leading by example, you're really showing the way forward, creating the vision and hoping that everybody aligns to it, right? And that's where it now starts boiling down to what kind of leadership are you really going to do? Is it more of the more negative and power-driven type implementation of it, or are you going to be very bureaucratic, where it's still that negative part of it, but it's more or less a control type way of driving people to do the change, which doesn't really give you the results you want, right?
Exactly.
Or are you really going to be generating, like we discussed, right? Which really starts creating the element of motivation, the element of mentoring, coaching, providing context, and actually being the change. There's a difference between accepting change and being the change that you want your people to be, right? And that's really where people now start keying in. When people start understanding the why, start getting that psychological safety, right?
Psychological safety,
that,
exactly.
Yeah, the psychological safety, because Agile is a known disruptor. When you introduce Agile into an organization, you destabilize more than likely you destabilize the organization to a great extent, because it's something brand new. So before introducing it, as well as we go out and adopt, as much as we go out and say we need to adapt to this adopted way of working, I think it becomes very pertinent for the leaders to now go on and lead the change, not
absolutely
be an example, just lead by example. They need to lead the change, and that's where they create those safety nets. They create the motivation that is needed. They create an environment that is welcoming for people to learn, fail, and not feel they will be penalized for failing, right?
Correct.
And for people to feel that they are not going to lose their jobs, because the worst thing that can happen to anybody is when people start feeling like they're sitting on the edge, right? When somebody is on the edge, anything can happen, if you ask me, within the context of. And that's really what bringing lean and agile leadership does for an organization, and how we can start seeing it get applied, right? To really take our people from when they will adopt to when we adapt to when they start accepting. And then that's when you start seeing that whole change plus transition versus just the change, and then the transition hangs in the balance.
Absolutely, Mark. That reminds me of this particular leadership style where most of the times, like the traditional approach of carrot and stick method, right? Reward and punishment kind of a method would work out maybe in a rules-based environment. But if you want to be truly innovative, you really wanted to focus on those intrinsic motivation factors, for example, autonomy, right? And how do you actually want to make sure that their work is exactly variety of the work and interesting enough work, and also some stretch goals, right? It is not, if it is too easy, employees get bored. If it is too tough, they give up. So it's the very delicate balance of the leadership is to provide them the variety of the work as well as that exactly enough stretch goals, so that their mastery over that subject improves over a span of time. That's what actually I think I was reading this book called Drive by Daniel Pink, and he beautifully explains this concept called what motivates knowledge workers, frankly speaking, in the modern era. And amazing. I mean, like the way right now, it's the time for the leadership, if they are actually coming from the traditional background, they have got a lot to learn and unlearn and do the things in a very different way, which could be a very challenging thing for themselves, actually, frankly speaking. So no doubt about it. And that's the reason I think a lot of agile transformations, not many of them are successful, actually, frankly speaking.
I mean, You see that happen a lot, right? Where organizations embark on a journey and then transformation. When we talk about transformation again, is change plus transition, right?
Correct.
So a lot of organizations get in the habit of thinking that once we're able to bring in Scrum Masters, we're able to bring in coaches, we're able to start running meetings, technology is agile. That doesn't define it, right? Technology can be agile and the business is not, right? Because and I think some of the things that create that mindset is that the lines of business often view IT as a cost center, right?
Yes.
And they view the business as the profit center.
Absolutely.
So when we start separating things in that fashion, it creates a certain challenge, right? Because it's profit versus cost. So I'm spending on you, and this is what I need you to do. Well, the news flash in that is that IT as well is evolving, right? And with IT evolving, with the requirements coming from the lines of business, how can you build a flow of work and strategy and ideas that can be delivered on time and very effectively or efficiently if the source of the exploration or the source of the requirements are not as flexible as the people who are doing the work. And that's where you now start seeing that head button that often occurs between IT and the business, because the lines are not clearly defined. If your requirements are taking too long to get to the team, and when requirements get to them, they are not clear, it impacts the output of what the team can do. If the teams don't have the right technology foundation, an understanding of the technology itself, right, that they need to do the work, it's going to be a challenge. Who provides those contexts? Who provides the guidance? Who provides the resources? It's leadership. So if the leadership is not projecting their thought out maybe 5-10 years from today, to really get to understand what is it that we're going to need? How can we put our people, create the right environment that challenges our people, gives them the right resources, creates a more enabling interaction between leadership and the various teams to get more insight and alignment? How then can they give you the results you need? It's more like you're stroking a horse that has been running for 10 days and you've refused to give it water. So it becomes a very big challenge. And that's what we often see happen.
Absolutely.
Transformation is not IT specific. It's the entire organization. And that's how we start thinking about. That's why Lean Agile Leadership still remains of the 7 core competencies of SAFE. Lean Agile still remains the foundation. Even when we're looking at the house of Lean, when we're looking at respect for people and culture, when we're looking at the flow, when we're looking at innovation, and we're looking at the continuous, relentless delivery of value, right? At the very top of it is the value. If you look at the house of Lean, in order to deliver, these are the 4 pillars. But what is the foundation that supports the culture and respect for people, Lean flow, the innovation and the relentless improvement? It's leadership. Without leadership, there is really no context to most of what we do.
Absolutely. I completely.
Just to throw one more thing in, and leadership, it doesn't mean those who are at the very high level who can only make the decisions around funding. Leadership can also be at our team level. Everybody,
exactly.
when you create a culture where people see themselves as leaders and take ownership and do things without waiting to be told what to do and how to do it, but they do it in line with the vision and strategy. That is leadership. It's more around the role you play and what you bring to the table versus the title you hold.
Yeah, I mean, I could correlate that with a decentralized decision making,
Yes.
where in leadership actually allow their teams to take local decisions which are not really long impacting, not having very large impact on the overall bottom line. Yeah, decentralized decision making. And another thing is about the value stream and cross-functional teams as well, as you were
Yes.
rightly telling about the IT. I mean, you cannot achieve that organizational agility if you are still trying to run the organization in silos, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, the true agility comes when even within the agile teams, marketing, HR, and even the business folks are coming up, and they are actually working as one team. Unlike, this is my silo of marketing, this is my silo of HR. No, I mean, like, you got to be really cross-functional, truly cross-functional, in order to get the business agility. I completely understand. I mean,
Yes.
It makes sense, actually. Yep.
Yes.
Absolutely. Thanks, Mark, on that one.
Right.
Yeah, let's get to the next one. Yep. So the next question is like, leading by example. We always quote that a lot, right? Is it same as leading the change for a lean agile leader? Like, this is a very interesting question, actually, in my opinion, because we always say, okay, lead by example, but is it same as the leading the change, actually, Mark?
I think there's a variation, right? I think when they say lead by example, okay, you do things that people could learn from. And I think it becomes more of you're doing a show and tell, right? But at the same time, you have to understand that people are at various stages and various places at different times. So it becomes more of, are you present to really now sit back to observe and provide the needed support, provide a conducive environment for them to really get into the swing of the change. And I think that's what leading the change involves. So you're not only there to show them what to do, and tell them, lead them to the stream, but you're also there to tell and provide context and provide the needed resources, the avenues, the coaching, the mentoring, the insight,
Right.
the sit downs, the motivation that you can give to people to really put them and put them on a path that drives them towards improvement, whether it's individuals or as a group or as a team. And I think that's one thing that is very fundamental when it comes to leading by example versus leading the change. It's not only about doing. I think leading by example is more of the doing, but leading the change is more of the being. When you be something, it becomes part of you. Are you part of your team? Are you part of your organization? Are you part of their success stories as individuals, working within the context of the org, working for you and being able to provide them that level of trust that they can believe that, yes, you're really there for them and you're there to get them to that next level. Because everybody thinks about self-actualization. That's a very key aspect too.
Yep.
Individuals working in an organization need to feel like they are getting somewhere. Gone are the days where we look at things from a paycheck level, where it becomes, okay, I'm getting paid and that's okay. People want to grow. So when you look at it, you also have to put in measures and put in avenues to really drive that sense of learning within the organization. When you turn your organization from a more of a working organization to a learning organization, I think you start seeing that transformation. And that, to me, it means leading the change, because you're being the change and not just doing the change.
Yeah, so I could refer to that as Lean Agile teacher managers. They call it in Toyota. They call it as Lean Agile teacher managers. So what they do is basically they teach, I mean, a coaching style as a management style, coaching as a management style. And definitely, I think what I could interpret with your answer was that leading by example sets the culture tone for the organization, probably, like, because most of the leaders, what they do will largely impact the culture of the organization, frankly speaking, right? And having the right culture is very, very important for leading the change, frankly speaking. So that's my opinion, Mark.
Yeah, absolutely. And you hit the nail right on the head. From the context of we're doing it, right? We're doing the change. We're showing the people the culture is changing, but it needs to be sustainable. If it's not sustainable over time, it's going to die off. And there is no essence. What's the essence, or what benefit is it to the organization to invest time and resources to a certain level where the organization goes and culture is changed, things are moving in the right direction, and then when the person who is leading that effort is no more, the change disappears. And that's what we see happen to a lot of organizations, right? We see instances where there is a CEO, CFO, or a CIO of IT who comes in, who has bright ideas, bright initiatives. They are leading by example. They are doing everything right, setting up the right infrastructure, setting up everything. But as soon as they are no more, they are the beacon of hope for those people, right, within that context of the organization. But as soon as those individuals are no more, the transformation fails and is stopped. And that's why there's no sustainability. But when you lead by example, you don't lead to be the only person to be seen. You create champions. As you create champions, you're creating evangelists. You're creating all kinds of people who, even when you're gone as a leader, leading by example, the change lives on. And that's what leading the change is. So you're taking it away from just doing things people can see to doing things that are sustainable in the long run.
Absolutely. I think those celebrating those early wins and anchoring those behaviors within the culture, right? As Cotter says in his change management principles, that anchoring those cultures behaviors in the culture is very, very important as a change management, for sure.
Yes,
no doubt about it. Yeah. Okay. Let's see the next question then. Okay, here is the upcoming question. How crucial is the mindset alignment for a Lean Agile leader when it comes to fixed versus growth mindset? I mean, I'm a big fan of this book called, Carol Dweck Mindset, and she is a Stanford professor who actually came up with this fixed mindset and growth mindset. Beautiful book written by her. And I would like to understand, like, what is the growth mindset in the context of Lean Agile leader that plays the importance here, Mark?
So, fixed versus growth. I think it's very crucial. There's a theory in economics that says good money derives from bad money. Yeah, and it's the truth, because think about it, right? Anytime you print a bill, a currency, we live in the United States. Srini, you're out in India, and I'm sure there are folks here on the call, on the webinar, that are out in Nigeria, where you use the naira, and all over the world as well. But when you print a brand new note, it circulates, right, within the economy, right? And over time, as it changes hands, over time, the durability of the money kind of wears away a little bit. Though it's still durable and acceptable currency, but it gets old, right? And then over time, have to take out that currency and print new currency, right? And that's the idea of good money deriving from bad money.
Bad money, yeah, correct.
So I think if you asked me, I think we are all creatures of value systems. We are all creatures of habits. We are all creatures of experience. We're all creatures of culture. We're all creatures of religion and whatever background that you come from.
Conditioning, probably, right? Conditioning. Right from
exactly. We do come from a specific ecosystem. And depending on the ecosystem or system you're born from, it comes with its standards. There are things that we learn, there are things that we know, there are things that we unlearn over time. So I think with that, you have a full-blown individual. There's a saying that every individual you see presents something up front, right? There are noticeable, observable behaviors. But in front of those observable behaviors, beneath it, what lies is like the theory of the iceberg, right? You think of an iceberg, for instance, you see it, you think it's just that little piece you're seeing at the very top. Sometimes it goes all the way to the depths of the ocean, right? Beneath, what lies beneath? And what lies beneath every individual or behavior is the value system, your proposition, your thought process, how you make decisions, the mindset. Your experience and all these things that drive and showcase what you see in front. Now, as we progress as individuals through our growth phases, I think we already have a fixed element about us, which forms the foundation. And from there, we can now start putting our best foot forward to really understand what are some of those other behaviors that are things that I can do that can change me from who I typically am. I give you an example. Growing up, from when I finished college, I was more of this kind of person who I wouldn't could stay with me in the house all day, and you could count the number of times I've spoken. But these days, with the line and the career path I decided to toe, it's not a career path where you're not able to speak. It's not a career path where you're just going to keep quiet and not say something, right? You need to learn how to present, you need to learn how to speak, you need to learn how to observe and do so many and listen at the same time. All those things come. So that became a different growth trajectory for me as a person. And I think that's what we were looking at here when it comes about fixed versus growth. Is what are those solid behaviors and practices that we know already, but in the line of growth and in the line of change and transition, are you putting your best foot forward to learn new things that could make you better than where you are today? And I think that's where the fixed versus growth mindset comes into the picture. Because if you're putting your best foot forward and learning new things and unlearning some old behaviors, that's how you start seeing growth. If you stay fixed with those mindsets that are not very, that are more like, oh, I already know it, I don't need to know beyond what I know.
Right.
Or I don't want you to tell me how to do it. Or no, Agile would not work. Yeah. Things like that.
I call it as a beginner's mind, generally beginner's mind. If you go, I mean, especially with Lean Agile, you need to really open your lid up there. And if you close it up, if you close it down, and nothing new information will enter there for sure. And I mean, frankly speaking, in order to have that beginner's mindset, you need to be a little vulnerable and a little open to the challenges, right? Basically, you are admitting that, I don't know this, I want to learn this, right?
Yes.
And that courage comes from the ability by acknowledging the fact that my mindset can be changed. I mean, many people in this world, they come up with this fixed mindset. I am born like this, I am going to be this way because I have been like this forever, and
Yes.
I will be this way, and my mindset cannot be changed. That's the fixed mindset. And a person maybe in a different circumstances, in a different culture,
Yeah.
but he still believes that his mindset can be changed, is a growth mindset, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of difference it is going to make over the, I mean, the trajectory of his career, every aspect of
Absolutely.
his life will change, frankly.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because if you look at it very closely on a day-to-day basis, the growth mindset is our actionable mindset. And there's this mindset that tells you, okay, you already know what you know, don't worry about it. The brain has an analytical and an emotional side to it, right?
Right.
Depending
Absolutely.
on where you are, because if you to perform that day-to-day task, we do
Correct.
different things every day. We use the more analytical part of things, right? And most of the times, if we're not really wanting to think too hard, we'll just settle for the other side of our brain that tells us, okay, you know what you know, that's fine, right?
Right.
Don't do anything more than that. It creates one of the things about it too is that when you now start seeing people doing things differently and being successful, you
Right.
criticize, you get
Yep.
jealous, you start
Right.
feeling less of an important person because you've seen now that that would have been an opportunity for you to get better and you had it and you tossed it away. So
Right.
on a micro level, there's a micro and a macro implication. So as leaders, lean agile leaders, look at things. Think about companies like Google. Think about companies like
Absolutely.
Yahoo. A couple of years ago,
Absolutely.
Google approached Yahoo for them to buy them out and had this bright idea, and Yahoo refused. Whoever those
Refused. Yep.
leaders
I
were
remember
at the
that.
time, whoever they were at the time, looking back today, what do you think they will be thinking? Do you think they could stand in front of the people who really started Google, the owners and all that today, and look them in a straight face and tell them, well, yeah. So it becomes something that we also have to keep in our own practices as people, right? Understanding that put your best foot forward every day to learn something new.
Exactly. And coming to the Google, right, they are the best examples of the generative culture, if I recall, because they used to allow people 20% of their time to work on the personal projects. When I say personal, of course, obviously, of their interest, which is aligned to their interest, but which could be called as a side project. They are not, they're not going to ask about that, what they are doing, but it's a kind of a passion project on the side. And surprisingly, some of the interesting products from Google came out of that 20% of that personal time, the passion projects. And
Absolutely.
Gmail is the best example. Google News is the best example for that. And, I mean, like, sometimes I feel like, if you give the people the freedom to be themselves and explore their, passion and
Yes, it becomes very key to when we as we evolve through that process and are able to do that. So at this point, we're going to move on to the Q&A aspect of it. I do see that we have a question first from an anonymous attendee. What are the necessities to becoming a Lean Agile leader? So I think it starts first with self. I think when you really become an agile leader is when you start building yourself to really have empathy, have a sense of innovation, have a sense of creativity, being able to really understand your people as they come in the organization and understand what role they play and how best right? That you could also enable your people to really become better than what they are. And I think that becomes very key when that happens. I think that's one way to start thinking of becoming a lean agile leader, or some of the necessities that you need. You need to really see beyond what others can see. You need to have a vision, and you need to be able to influence. You need to be able to influence people to really get into understanding what your vision and how your vision impacts them and how it impacts the organization as a whole.
Yes, yes, Mark. Yeah,
So,
I completely agree. So right now I would like to actually, see if our participants have any questions right now.
Yes,
and,
we just answered the first question, Srini, which was from an anonymous.
Okay, so
what are the necessities for becoming a lean agile leader? And that was the question.
Okay, great. Great.
Yeah.
Super.
And then there's a second question that I see here. I believe a lot of organizations look to Agile to solve their problems without doing any root cause analysis on why the waterfall process wasn't working. What can you say about this, Mark? Well, so every organization goes to a point where they get to a point where they feel they need that transformation. Talking about the way organizations are today and the way the world is moving, if you're looking at the VUCA factor, the volatility, uncertainty, complexities, and ambiguities of the marketplace, think about it for a second. If you take a step back, a couple of years ago, 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago, who was thinking of COVID? Nobody. Nobody, understanding that our markets are constantly going to be guided by events and rhythms and events. You have to look at what is the best methodology for you to really align your organization in terms of efficiency, in terms of speed to market or time to market, in terms of bureaucracies that are part of really the entire organization being able to align and compete more favorably in the marketplace. So yeah, as much as you want to spend time doing a root cause analysis, you also need to understand that you don't have all that time. Competition is something that you don't want to catch up with you and run ahead of you. So one thing that organizations should be thinking is incrementally making those changes, regardless. Start moving your organization one way or the other, because these are behaviors that have been learned over a very long time. If your organization has been in business for 30, 40 years, don't think that the change is going to happen today and tomorrow or in 6 months. It's going to take another couple of years and a huge investment, both in human and other type of resources to really get you from where you are to where you need to be. I think one of the mistakes a lot of organizations make is thinking that transformation is something we can achieve in a year. Newsflash, that is absolutely false. The fallacy of planning, the planning fallacy or fallacy of planning the cut, right? Because you can't plan that way. Change doesn't happen that fast.
That's why they say agile doesn't have an end point, right? It's a continuous on the spectrum. So yeah, it's a continuous improvement, no doubt about it.
Yes.
And looking at various aspects of even the core competencies of SAFe, I feel as you rightly mentioned in the beginning itself, that leadership is the foundational thing of those 7 core competencies, if you look at it. And without a solid foundation, it's not going to sustain, right? I mean, definitely, no doubt about it.
I do see another question. Does the concept of Lean Agile Leadership apply across the diverse enterprise? Yeah, leadership is something that sustains the entire org. It's the center, it's the foundation, right, of everything that we do. If you have the right leadership, that's when and how things start becoming more effective and, becoming the way things should be. Remember, leaders need to lead by example, but in order to sustain the change, they also need to lead the change. So if you don't have the
Right.
right leaders leading by example and leading the change, you can imagine where that enterprise is going to be.
Yep.
And then we see another question here that says, what are the possible challenges that will be faced in an organization when implementing Lean Agile? That is a great question. I think the biggest challenge we face is I call it the entrenchment factor. I wrote an article in 2020 that had to
Okay.
talk about why Agile teams fail. And one of the reasons I pointed out in that article is the entrenchment mindset. A lot of us and a lot of times in the organization, one of the things we see is that people just don't feel comfortable. And it's also as a result of what safety nets the leadership has created, which is really leading the change. And that's why Lean Agile leadership is very important, right? If people feel safe, if people know that their jobs are not going to disappear on them and they're not going to be able to feed their families and provide within the context of what should be done for their families, then they are more receptive of what you're telling them. And then sometimes too, even when people feel that way, there's this whole fear of trying to dabble into the unknown. And that's the fixed versus growth mindset. When people don't want to put their best foot forward and try to learn something different because they've been doing this for 35 years and it works. It's not broken. Don't fix it. Well, that becomes a challenge for the organization as well. How do you change plus transit people like that? And those are the biggest challenges.
Correct.
It becomes also a culture. Are you creating a culture that is a learning culture, right? It's okay to fail, but learn from your failure and apply your learnings to the context of your work. And these are all things that
absolutely, Mark.
We start facing: the cultural challenge, the entrenchment challenge, and the learning challenge.
Absolutely, Mark. I think ability of Lean Agile leaders for the tolerance for the failure, if I may call it, right? It should be a little higher, because it's not that we are actually trying to succeed in the first attempt itself. It's the goal is to learn from that iteration, and then how do we actually get better in the next iteration, right? So that's the kind of culture they need to really imbibe within the organization, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
So that's a great perspective, Mark. Thanks a lot for sharing with our audience today. And do we have any other questions that I would like to ask our audience if they have any other questions that they would like to share, or did we answer all the questions in the Q&A box?
So we do have some thought here that I think it's Madhuri. Thank you for that
Madhuri.
question. Though, I am new to Agile. I could feel that Agile is very accommodative, adaptive. That is what makes it very popular with clients from across the world. Correct me if I'm wrong. Absolutely, it is an adaptive process, right? It is an adaptive process, and because it's adaptive, that's why it becomes very key for us to align within the context of the work we do and how we do it. There's no definite way of going from point A to point B. Just try as much as possible to find your best route, but make sure that your outcome is exactly what you set out to do. And that's how I kind of explain it, right? If I'm going on a straight road, I don't want to believe that if there's an accident or something, because, not wishing that on anybody, or there's a blocker, something happens along that road that prevents me from traveling on that same path. And then
Right.
all I can think about is either I sit down there till that blocker goes away, or I turn around and start heading home. For me, I think is when you're encountering things like that, it becomes an opportunity for you to find the next exit. What's the next route that can take, pivot, make a turn, come back on that same road and continue with my journey. If we look at Agile in that way, then yes, it becomes very adaptive for us because it's telling us there's just no one way of doing things.
Exactly. Madhuri, that's a great question. And that's a good answer, Mark. I mean, thanks for joining, Madhuri. I appreciate that. And yeah, I mean, I truly enjoyed this session, Mark, frankly, great perspectives. And especially I like this thing, transformation equal to change plus transition. I really like that. I mean, that's how we should look at the transformation, and lots of learnings. And before we wind up this session, Mark, I would like to request you to have any message for our audience for today.
Yeah, well, the final, I just want to thank you all for being here with us this morning, taking times out of your busy schedule. Please follow us on our social media at Agile 17, on LinkedIn at Agile 17 LLC. Follow our channel on YouTube at Agile 17 LLC. We're on Facebook at Agile 17 LLC as well. And connect with us on our website, get some understanding of where we are, and be part of our transformation journey, and engage with us. We're always available to work with you and to partner with you on your journey as well. And thank you, Srini, for great hosting, and looking forward